This is the Physical Science Section 2.3 lesson video, and as always, if you subscribe to my channel, you'll have all my videos for the whole year. So now we're going to talk about chemical properties. So a chemical property is any ability to produce a change in the composition of matter. So in the previous video, we talked about physical properties, so there was no change in the composition. Chemical properties, there is a change in the composition. Chemical properties can be observed only when the substances in a sample of matter are changing into different substances. That's the only time you can observe a chemical property. Flammability and reactivity are two examples of chemical properties. So we don't know if something's flammable or not until we literally try to set it on fire. And once you set it on fire, the components are changing at that point. Flammability is the ability to burn in the presence of oxygen. So again, until you actually set it on fire, you cannot test the flammability of something. And reactivity, that's the property that describes how readily a substance combines chemically with other substances. So for example, some things are highly reactive, like a concentrated acid. That wants to combine with everything. Whereas some things are not quite as reactive, like for example, gold and silver. That's why we make our jewelry out of it, because we don't want something that's going to react with our skin. We don't make our jewelry out of acids because that will eat through our skin. A chemical change occurs when a substance reacts and forms one or more new substances. Three common types of evidence for a chemical change are a change in color, the production of a gas, and the formation of a precipitate. So those are some of the ways that you can tell a chemical change is occurring. There are more than these, but these are the three that our book discusses. So, change in color, ripening of bananas, that is a chemical change. When you buy them at the store, sometimes they're green, they're not even yellow yet. And as the days pass, they start turning yellow, then the little brown dots start coming, and then eventually if you let them sit out long enough, they turn dark brown or black in color. So that is a chemical change that is occurring in the bananas. And you can actually taste the change. When you first buy them and they're green, or even when they're just bright yellow, they're kind of almost tart a little bit, or even a little bit bitter sometimes, depending. But as it goes through that ripening process, it gets sweeter because more sugars are present. Production of a gas. So for example, when you mix vinegar and baking soda and make that vinegar baking soda volcano, that is production of a gas. That's where all the bubbling comes from. So if you ever say bubbling, production of a gas and bubbling are the same thing. So don't list those as two separate ways to tell a chemical reaction is occurring. And then last one is precipitate. This is the one you're probably least familiar with. Any solid that forms and separates from a liquid mixture is called a precipitate. So there's lots of different colors, but I picked a colored one so you can see what's happening. So we have a clear liquid down here. We're pouring another clear liquid in, and if you see, you have this bright yellow solid that forms. Now the solid is not like what you would think of as like a big chunk or like a rock. What's going to happen is the solid is kind of in a wet powder form, so it would settle at the bottom kind of like mud in a mud puddle. And then if we filter the liquid out of it, then we're left with the solid. And if we allow it to dry, it would be in like a powder form. All right, so that's what a precipitate is like. I'll show you examples of that in class. When matter undergoes a chemical change, the composition of the matter changes. When matter undergoes a physical change, the composition of the matter remains the same. So for example, a physical change would be water into ice. Water is H2O. Ice is H2O. We just changed the state of matter. It's still water. Whereas a chemical change would be turning water into hydrogen peroxide. Water is H2O. Hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. So they are no longer the same composition. So that would be a chemical change. So, section assessment. Under what conditions can chemical properties be observed? They can only be observed when the composition is changing. When the composition is changing. List three common types of evidence for a chemical change. We have color change, formation of a gas, and formation of a precipitate. Color change, formation of a gas, and formation of a precipitate. How do chemical changes differ from physical changes? Well, chemical changes change the composition. Physical changes do not change the composition. It just changes some of the physical properties. All right, next one. A pat of butter melts and then burns in a hot pan. Which of these changes is physical and which is chemical? Well, solid butter versus melted butter, they're both butter. So the melting would be physical. But once you burn it, anything being burned, that is a chemical change, because at that point, you're going to start seeing a color change, it's going to start tasting different, it's going to smell different. So that would definitely be a chemical change at that point. If you spill household bleach on denim jeans, you will observe that the area of the spill is no longer a blue color. Is this change physical or chemical? Well, remember, one of our ways to know a chemical change has occurred is a color change. So if you bleach something and you lose the color, that's a color change. So that would be a chemical change, a chemical change. All right, gold and platinum are often used to make jewelry. What can you infer about the reactivity of these elements? Well, again, if we want to wear it on our skin, we don't want it to be very reactive. So we would say they have low reactivity. They have low reactivity. All right, so hopefully now you know a little bit more about chemical changes and the signs you can look for that one is occurring.